Tessa, hobbies are cute, but let's be honest, no one really cares. Kyle's words stung like a slap across the face. He'd spoken loud enough so everyone at my parents' anniversary party could hear, and laughter instantly followed. My stomach tightened, cheeks burning red, humiliation flooding every inch of me. My name is Tessa, and I've always been the family joke, the girl playing with paintbrushes while everyone else chased after real success. Kyle, my older brother, made sure of it. He'd turned minimizing my art into his favorite sport. Each sarcastic jab sliced deeper than the last, always perfectly timed, always public. Tonight, it was worse. This painting I'd brought was supposed to prove myself, finally. I'd poured my heart into every brushstroke, desperate for even the smallest sign of approval. Instead, it hung awkwardly on the wall, mocked and ignored, just like me. I clenched my fists, my nails biting into my palms. People around me laughed, their whispers hot and shameful against my ears. I tried to pretend it didn't matter, forcing a small smile, but inside, I felt like I was drowning. Kyle stepped closer, his grin sharp, his voice deliberately cruel. Just stop embarrassing yourself, okay? Stick to finger painting if you want applause. Something inside me cracked right then. A cold, fierce determination flooded my chest. I'd hidden my true success from them for far too long, quietly becoming more than they'd ever imagined. But Kyle didn't know, none of them did, that behind the scenes my hobby was already opening doors they couldn't even dream of. Soon, they'd learn the truth. And when they did, I'd make sure Kyle felt every ounce of humiliation I'd ever endured. Twice as deeply, twice as painfully. He'd regret ever calling my dreams a joke. Before I share the rest of my story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit like and subscribe if you've ever overcome something for your family. Trust me, you have no idea what they'll do once they find out the truth. Growing up, being invisible became normal. It wasn't that I didn't try. I tried so hard it hurt. But the thing was, my family never really saw me. They celebrated Kyle every chance they got. Good grades, varsity soccer team captain, acceptance to Dad's old university. Every small win of his got magnified into epic proportions. Meanwhile, I painted quietly in my room, my hands always smeared in color, my heart aching for just one word of encouragement. When I won the local art contest in my senior year of high school, my first real award, it was like a beacon of hope. I raced home clutching that little trophy, my heart practically flying out of my chest. But when I walked into the kitchen, Dad barely glanced up from his phone. Mom nodded distractedly, absorbed in Kyle's story about some college scouting call. Kyle paused just long enough to smirk at me. "Oh look, Tessa painted another rainbow. Good job, kiddo." I stood there, holding the trophy tighter, my throat tight and vision blurry. They barely even saw me standing there, let alone understood what I'd accomplished. I slipped quietly into my room, the silence louder than if they'd shouted insults. I put the trophy on my shelf, hidden between books, as if even I began doubting whether it mattered. That wasn't the last time something like that happened. When I got into a prestigious summer art residency, Kyle called it an overpriced summer camp. When a local gallery first exhibited my paintings, Mom showed up late, scrolling through her phone. Dad didn't even come. "Next time," he promised absently, like always. But next time never arrived. Eventually, I stopped telling them anything. I held my victories close to my chest, almost afraid their indifference might tarnish them somehow. Meanwhile, Kyle's minor promotions at Dad's company made headlines at the dinner table. They celebrated him loudly, publicly, proudly. Each cheer for Kyle felt like another silent slap across my face. It wasn't fair. I knew that. But I kept pushing forward anyway, fueled by the pain, quietly determined to create something they couldn't ignore. I buried myself in my art, letting each brushstroke carry the weight of unspoken words. In those quiet hours, I became stronger. Every humiliation became another layer of armor, teaching me resilience, even as it deepened my hurt. I told myself I was fine, that their opinions didn't matter, but the truth was harder to swallow. Deep down, I still hoped that someday they'd see me clearly. Maybe they'd finally realize they'd missed the person I'd become. Maybe, just maybe, they'd regret not noticing me sooner. But tonight, after Kyle's latest jab at the party, I realized I had been waiting too long. Their blindness wouldn't magically lift. I had to do something big enough to force their eyes open. And that something was already in motion, a secret achievement bigger than any of them could imagine. I smiled quietly to myself, thinking about how shocked they would be when they finally learned the truth. It would be worth all these years of invisibility. I promised myself that when they saw it, they wouldn't just acknowledge me, they'd regret every single moment they'd ignored me. And Kyle, I'd make sure he felt every ounce of humiliation I'd endured. Twice over. The turning point didn't happen overnight, and honestly, it wasn't one big moment. It was more like 1,000 tiny rebellions. Quiet victories nobody ever knew about. The thing is, the less my family noticed me, the stronger I became in secret. And gradually, those secrets grew bigger, until one day I realized I'd built something they couldn't dismiss. It started about 2 years ago, a small online art auction. I submitted a few pieces, honestly just hoping for enough money to buy more supplies. But when the bids started rolling in, climbing far beyond my modest expectations, I felt a thrill I'd never known before. Strangers saw value in my art, the art my own family treated like garbage. They didn't care about my last name or my brother's accomplishments. They just liked what I'd created. That validation ignited something in me. Suddenly, I was selling art faster than I could make it. My paintings found homes in real galleries. My name, Tessa Carson, began popping up in magazines and on popular art blogs. People emailed me asking for interviews, advice, even mentorship. Every small victory felt enormous, because it was mine alone, untouched by family expectations or Kyle's sarcastic jabs. I learned quickly how to keep it hidden, even from friends. At first it was because I worried my family would find out and dismiss it again. Later it became a game, a secret I loved protecting. It fueled me. Every time Kyle laughed at me, or Mom casually brushed off my work, I just smiled inside, thinking about how wrong they were. And then, 6 months ago, I received a message that changed everything. A gallery owner from New York, one I'd dreamed about for years, wanted to host a solo exhibit of my work, a full show dedicated just to me, Tessa, the girl who was always invisible. When I read the email, my hands shook. I stared at the screen, rereading the words over and over, terrified they'd disappear if I blinked. This was the kind of success even my family couldn't ignore. It would make them finally see me, truly see me. I thought about telling them immediately, but stopped myself. No, I wanted it to be a surprise, an undeniable moment of triumph. I wanted them to find out when everyone else did. Their shock twice as sweet after years of dismissing me. From that day forward, I poured everything into preparing for the show. Late nights turned into early mornings. My hands cramped, my back ached, but I never stopped. I painted until my fingers blistered, driven by an intense need to prove them all wrong. And as I worked, my confidence grew. Each new piece felt stronger, bolder, more real than anything I'd ever done before. The exhibit was now just days away. Invitations were sent to media, critics, and art collectors, but not my family. They would hear about it, of course, just not from me. Let them feel what it's like to be blindsided, to realize they'd overlooked something amazing right under their noses. Let them finally see exactly who they had dismissed so easily. This moment was mine alone, built quietly from years of hurt, anger, and resilience. Soon, everyone would see that my cute hobby was never a joke. And Kyle, especially Kyle, would finally understand the pain he'd inflicted, multiplied by the shame he'd feel when the truth hit him. The night before my big show in New York, I stood staring at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, trying to calm the nerves buzzing just beneath my skin. My phone sat on the sink, the screen glowing with unanswered texts, mostly from friends excited about tomorrow. But there was one message I'd been avoiding all day, glowing there at the top, impossible to ignore. Mom's invitation to a family dinner tonight. I'm glad everyone's here tonight, he began, eyes fixed on Kyle. I've made a decision about the future of the family business. It's time to pass things along to someone who can handle it with dignity and responsibility. Kyle straightened confidently, already smiling. But Dad's eyes drifted slowly until they rested directly on me. But first, Tessa, there's something you need to understand about your role here. My heart froze. Every eye at the table snapped toward me, filled with confusion and suspicion. Kyle's smug expression faltered briefly, replaced by open irritation. And suddenly, I knew. Tonight wasn't just another awkward family dinner. Something big was about to happen, something they weren't prepared for. Neither was I. But ready or not, it was coming. The tension in the room felt suffocating. Every pair of eyes stared at me, waiting. My throat tightened, pulse racing like I'd just sprinted uphill. Kyle's jaw clenched as he shot Dad a sharp, questioning glance. Dad's expression remained unreadable, his fingers steepled calmly, waiting for quiet to settle. But Mom broke the silence first. "Tessa, honey, let's be realistic." Her tone carried thinly veiled concern, though it felt more like pity. "You're an artist, dear. Business just isn't your world." Kyle jumped in quickly, seizing the opening. "Exactly, Dad. Come on, Tessa's sweet, but let's face it, she's never even had a real job." He laughed dismissively. "Managing a multi-million-dollar empire, let's not embarrass her." Heat surged to my face, humiliation rising fast. Around the table, heads nodded, murmurs of agreement echoing Kyle's words. Aunt Pam leaned closer to Mom, her whisper loud enough for everyone. "I know we love her, but honestly, can you imagine Tessa running anything?" Their laughter cut me deeper than I expected, mocking echoes bouncing around the room. My hands shook beneath the table. Dad watched silently, waiting for the noise to subside, his eyes never leaving mine. I wanted desperately to disappear, but instead, I forced myself to breathe deeply, meeting his gaze. "Tessa," Dad began quietly, his voice carrying unexpected authority, silencing everyone instantly. "I haven't made any decisions yet. I invited you here because I needed to see something clearly." He leaned forward, his expression intense. "Your brother Kyle has always been clear about what he wants, but lately I've realized clarity isn't always honesty." Kyle's expression tightened, confusion flickering briefly before settling into cold anger. "What's that supposed to mean?" he snapped defensively. Dad ignored him, focused solely on me. "Tessa, tell me honestly, do you even want a place here in the family legacy? Or have you truly decided to step away entirely?" I swallowed hard. My mouth felt dry, my heartbeat hammering uncomfortably in my chest. Everyone waited, ready to judge my answer, to mock it or dismiss it. Kyle stared fiercely, daring me to speak, certain I would falter. But suddenly, a quiet defiance filled me. "Honestly," I said slowly, steadily. "You've never given me a chance to decide. You've spent my whole life assuming I'm nothing more than a joke. Kyle made sure of that." Kyle scoffed, leaning back confidently. "Tessa, please, you play victim better than you paint." Anger flashed through me. "And you lie better than you lead," I shot back sharply, surprising even myself. Gasps echoed around the table. Kyle's eyes darkened dangerously, but I refused to back down now. "None of you have the slightest clue who I am or what I'm capable of. You've never bothered to find out." Kyle laughed bitterly. "Sure, keep pretending, Tess. Maybe someone here will buy your sob story." A painful silence followed, heavy with disdain. Every face around the table mirrored his contempt, the whispers and sideways glances like needles prickling my skin. My chest tightened painfully, humiliation settling deep into my bones. Kyle leaned forward, his voice dangerously soft. "Face it, little sis, you'll always be an embarrassment." I didn't respond. I couldn't. His words burned, their cruelty sharper than any before. But deep down something whispered softly that he was wrong, and soon he'd see exactly how wrong he was. Because at that exact moment my phone vibrated urgently in my pocket. An incoming call from the gallery flashed urgently on the screen. The show, my secret triumph, was about to become a very public revelation. I stared at the vibrating phone in my hand, frozen in place. My pulse pounded in my ears, drowning out Kyle's smug laughter and the uncomfortable whispers rippling around the table. Kyle, sensing my hesitation, leaned forward and snatched the phone from my hand. "Who's calling? Your imaginary art fan club?" He smirked, glancing down at the screen. Suddenly, his eyes narrowed, face draining of color. The smug confidence vanished instantly, replaced by shock and confusion. "What the?" Dad reached over swiftly, taking the phone from Kyle. His expression shifted from curiosity to surprise as he read the caller ID. He met my gaze with a strange intensity I'd never seen before. "Tessa," Dad said quietly, his voice dangerously even, "why is one of New York's biggest art galleries calling you right now?" Silence fell heavy around the table, disbelief thickening the air. I swallowed hard, struggling to steady my voice, which trembled despite my efforts. "Because tomorrow they're opening my solo exhibit." Kyle scoffed loudly. "That's impossible, she's lying, she probably paid them to call." Dad ignored him, holding up a hand sharply. "Kyle, enough. Kyle flinched, stunned silent by Dad's sudden command. Dad turned back to me, eyes unreadable. Why didn't you tell us? I stared directly into his eyes, my voice gaining strength with each word. Because I knew none of you would believe me or even care. You never have. Kyle made sure nobody took me seriously. Kyle sputtered angrily, panic creeping into his voice. Dad, come on, she's exaggerating. Dad interrupted him again, colder this time. Actually, Kyle, it seems you're the one who's been exaggerating. Do you want to explain why? When I asked you directly about your sister's art a few months ago, you told me she'd given up entirely? That she was just wasting her life? Kyle paled visibly, mouth opening silently in stunned betrayal. I was just being honest, Dad. Everyone knows she isn't. No, Dad cut him off sharply. You lied because you were afraid of your sister's success overshadowing your own. You sabotaged Tessa, deliberately misrepresenting her because you were jealous. Kyle's face turned deep crimson, panic and anger twisting together as he searched desperately for a defense. But Dad's gaze was final, coldly disappointed. Then Dad turned to the table, addressing everyone firmly. Tessa, as of tonight, will take the reins of the family empire. I've watched her quietly overcome every obstacle we placed in front of her. She's shown integrity, resilience, and strength, qualities I mistakenly thought belonged only to Kyle. The announcement slammed into the room like an earthquake. Shocked murmurs erupted around the table. Aunt Pam gasped audibly, covering her mouth. Mom stared blankly, eyes wide in disbelief. Kyle stood abruptly, his chair scraping harshly across the floor. You cannot be serious, Kyle roared, voice cracking with fury. Her? You're choosing her? Dad nodded calmly, unflinching. I'm choosing the person who never compromised her dignity, even when we did everything we could to crush it. Kyle stumbled back, humiliated, defeated, his pride shattered in front of everyone. The sight of his collapse sparked a surge of satisfaction I'd never imagined possible, intense and fiercely gratifying. Finally, they knew. Finally, Kyle felt exactly what he'd always made me feel. Only his humiliation was deeper, his betrayal more devastating. He'd always mocked me. Now the joke was painfully, undeniably on him. And I wouldn't apologize for it, not now, not ever. The room was chaos. Kyle paced furiously, fists clenched, while relatives whispered frantically, their glances darting between him, Dad, and me. Mom sat frozen, tears forming in her eyes, confusion and disbelief written all over her face. But before anyone could fully react, my phone buzzed again urgently. This time I took the call myself, my hand trembling as I answered quietly, Hello? The voice on the other end was warm, excited. Tessa, it's Jill from the gallery. I know it's late, but I couldn't wait another minute. We've sold out your entire exhibit in advance, every single piece. It's unprecedented. Critics are calling you the breakout artist of the year. My knees nearly buckled beneath me, breath catching painfully in my throat. Wait, sold out? Everything? I asked, barely above a whisper. Everything, Jill confirmed, voice glowing with excitement. Tessa, your life is about to change dramatically. I'm so proud of you. I stood there stunned, the phone pressed to my ear, the news almost too good, too surreal to fully grasp. The entire table had gone deathly quiet, every pair of eyes fixed firmly on me, waiting. Slowly I lowered the phone, my gaze moving to Kyle first, whose smug confidence had evaporated entirely, replaced by disbelief and dawning dread. I've sold out my entire art exhibit, I announced clearly, my voice carrying strongly, decisively through the silence. Every piece is gone, and the critics are calling me the breakout artist of the year. Absolute silence gripped the room. Aunt Pam's fork clattered loudly onto her plate. Kyle looked like he'd been punched, jaw slack, eyes wide with humiliation. Mom stared in shock, unable to hide her guilt or regret. Dad's expression shifted to something I'd never seen directed at me. Pride, genuine pride. Kyle's disbelief turned quickly to desperate anger. This can't be happening, he spat, voice shaking, searching desperately for control. You're nothing, Tessa. You're nobody. I met his anger calmly, unwavering. You're wrong, Kyle. I've always been somebody. You just refused to see it. Kyle stormed toward me, eyes blazing. You've stolen this from me. You've ruined everything. Dad stepped sharply between us, his voice dangerously calm. No, Kyle. You've ruined it yourself. You tried to destroy your sister's dreams to protect your own ego. You're the only one to blame. Kyle froze, stunned and deflated, as if the truth had physically knocked him backward. The whispers grew louder around us, the family's judgmental gazes finally turning away from me, landing squarely on him. The tables had turned completely, irreversibly. Dad turned toward me, his voice strong, warm. "Tessa, you've earned everything that's coming to you. You've shown more integrity and courage than anyone at this table, myself included." The power of his words hit deeply. Tears blurred my vision, relief and gratitude so powerful they took my breath away. My family had spent a lifetime ignoring and dismissing me, but now the truth shone clearly. I finally stood tall, vindicated in front of everyone who'd ever doubted me. And Kyle? For the first time, he stood in my shadow. Humiliated, defeated, fully aware of the pain he'd so casually inflicted all those years. I took a slow, steady breath, savoring every second of Kyle's crushing realization. Tonight wasn't just revenge, it was justice, served with twice the pain, twice the satisfaction. Kyle staggered backward, stunned and silent, his face pale with humiliation. The same family members who'd whispered cruel jokes about me moments earlier now stared at him in shock, their respect melting into shameful embarrassment. The air was electric with tension. Mom finally broke the silence, her voice shaking slightly. "Tessa, we had no idea." I turned to face her calmly. "That's exactly the problem, Mom. You never bothered to know. You never thought I could be anything more than a silly girl with an impossible dream." Dad nodded gravely, his expression both proud and deeply remorseful. "Tessa, I've made mistakes, terrible mistakes, but tonight, you've shown me exactly who you are, and who I should have believed in all along." I nodded slowly, accepting his words without smiling. Forgiveness wasn't something I was ready to give so easily. Not yet. I needed them to understand the pain of years spent invisible and mocked, years they could never truly take back. Kyle, regaining some of his lost composure, suddenly laughed bitterly, the sound hollow and broken. "So, that's it? Now you all turn on me? After everything I've done for this family? Everything you've done?" My voice cut sharply through the silence. "You lied, you humiliated me at every opportunity. You enjoyed seeing me fail, even if you had to make up those failures yourself." He scoffed weakly, but the confidence he'd wielded so casually was shattered. "You think you're better than me now, Tess? One lucky break doesn't change who you are." "You're right," I said, holding his gaze steadily. "One lucky break wouldn't. But this wasn't luck, it was years of effort, resilience, and strength you never bothered to notice. And it wasn't one break, Kyle, it was dozens, all hidden from your view, because you were too blind and arrogant to see beyond yourself." He flinched visibly, unable to argue. Around us, the whispers shifted from curiosity to admiration. Admiration for me. I realized then, with a wave of quiet strength, that I no longer cared what these people thought. Their sudden respect felt too late, too shallow. I had grown beyond needing their approval. Turning my back calmly, I moved toward the door. Tonight has shown me exactly where I stand. I've earned my place, and no one, least of all you, Kyle, can take it away again. Kyle called after me desperately, voice cracking. "Tessa, wait, you can't just—" But Dad raised a hand sharply, cutting him off. "She's earned the right to walk away, Kyle. Let her go." The finality in Dad's voice echoed through the room, silencing Kyle instantly. My heart swelled with quiet satisfaction. It wasn't just victory, it was dignity reclaimed. They'd dismissed me, underestimated me, mocked me relentlessly, and now they had to live with the consequences. Stepping into the night air, I felt lighter than ever before, finally free. This was justice, raw and real. Twice as painful for Kyle, twice as satisfying for me. As I walked away, I knew their shame and regret would linger long after tonight. And that thought filled me with more peace than I'd ever known. Walking out of that house felt like stepping into fresh air after years of suffocation. As I reached the sidewalk, my phone buzzed again, this time flooded with messages of congratulations from the gallery team, artists I'd mentored, and friends who'd silently supported me. These were the people who'd genuinely cheered me on, even when my own family refused to look my way. Instead of heading straight home, I decided to visit my closest friend, Natalie. Her reaction to my news was exactly what I'd needed. Excessive excitement, sincere pride, and even joyful tears. She threw open her apartment door, immediately pulling me into a fierce hug. "You did it, I knew you would." Seeing her reaction, raw and genuine, felt like finally breathing again. Natalie had witnessed every struggle, celebrated every victory, big or small. Unlike my family, she'd always made space for my dreams, encouraged every step forward. Tonight, her pride was more meaningful than all my relatives' sudden hollow admiration. Over a celebratory glass of wine, we talked through everything that had happened. Natalie listened carefully, reacting perfectly at every moment. Outrage at Kyle's cruelty, deep satisfaction at his downfall, pride at my courage. She made me laugh when tears threatened, her presence grounding me firmly in the reality I'd finally embraced. "You know, Tessa," Natalie said seriously after a moment of quiet reflection, "family isn't just blood, it's the people who show up, who truly see you. You've built your real family. We see you clearly and we always have." Her words struck deep, warming places inside me that had stayed cold for too long. She was right. These friends, this chosen family had consistently stood by me, encouraged me, and celebrated who I was without reservation. It was powerful to realize I didn't need my parents' reluctant approval or Kyle's forced acknowledgement anymore. I had people who believed in me fully, genuinely, and without conditions. In the following days, my exhibit's success spread rapidly. Articles were published, critics praised my vision, collectors reached out to commission new pieces. My email filled with opportunities, invitations, and praise from complete strangers who resonated with my journey. The validation was overwhelming, real, earned, and undeniable. Natalie helped organize a small gathering of my closest supporters, turning her living room into a celebration of true friendship and authenticity. These were the faces who'd been there through setbacks and victories alike. Every laugh, every cheer, every toast was heartfelt and deeply meaningful. No masks, no hidden agendas, just genuine joy for my success. Later, when the party quieted down, Natalie nudged me gently, her voice tender. "Do you feel different now?" I smiled softly, realizing the answer immediately. Not different, more myself, like all those invisible years finally make sense. She squeezed my hand warmly, understanding perfectly. "You deserve this, Tessa. Every single moment." In that instant, I realized something essential. True respect doesn't come from those who belittle you and then regret it later. It comes from those who see your worth clearly from the beginning. I'd finally found my place, defined not by a family name but by those who genuinely valued me, exactly as I was. Tonight, I knew exactly who mattered, and exactly where I belonged. After that night, I drew clear lines, new boundaries that I'd desperately needed for years but had been too afraid to set. It wasn't revenge anymore, it was protection. Kyle called several times, anger shifting into pleading apologies, begging me to forgive him. Each message grew increasingly desperate, even tearful, but every word rang hollow. He wasn't sorry for the hurt he'd caused, just sorry he'd been caught and exposed. I didn't answer. I had no room in my life anymore for manipulation, masked as remorse. My parents reached out too, slowly, tentatively. Dad's voice held a humility I'd never imagined possible from him, while Mom's messages trembled with guilt. But I kept my distance, knowing I needed space to breathe, to grow, and to heal away from their suffocating expectations. Forgiveness might come later, but right now, it was time for me. Over the next weeks, I stepped fully into my new role, both as a respected artist and as the unexpected heir to Dad's empire. It wasn't easy. Taking over meant confronting decades of family prejudice head-on. Many of the employees looked at me with skepticism, some openly questioning my competence. But now, instead of crumbling under their doubt, I stood firm, calm, proving myself through clear actions rather than desperate words. To my surprise, leading came naturally. The resilience I'd quietly cultivated during years of invisibility turned out to be exactly what I needed. Slowly, the skepticism turned into respect. My decisions weren't based on what would make me popular or acceptable to the family. They were based on integrity and fairness, something many realized had been missing before. As for Kyle, I learned through whispers that he'd quietly left the family business altogether, retreating into obscurity. Part of me felt satisfaction at his downfall, but a deeper part simply felt relieved. His absence allowed me the clarity to reshape the family legacy on my terms, free from his constant undermining. Natalie stayed by my side, a constant source of support and advice as I navigated this new life. Her presence reminded me daily of what real friendship and loyalty felt like, genuine, uncomplicated, unconditional. She was there when the doubts crept in, when the stress felt overwhelming, always steadying me with her calm belief in my abilities. One afternoon, as we walked through the gallery together, Natalie stopped suddenly, staring thoughtfully at one of my paintings. A bold piece I'd created during my most painful moments, vibrant and unapologetic. "You know," she said, eyes sparkling with pride, "I used to wonder if you'd ever truly believe in yourself the way I believed in you. Now look at you, you don't just believe in yourself, you own it." I smiled softly, warmth spreading through my chest, because I finally realized it was never about proving anything to them, it was about proving it to myself. She nodded firmly, squeezing my hand. "Exactly, and the world sees that now, Tessa. Your voice matters and no one can silence it again." Standing there, gazing at the canvas filled with strength and purpose, I felt peace settle within me. The boundaries I'd built weren't walls, they were a fortress of self-respect. I'd reclaimed my dignity, chosen my allies carefully, and turned the pain of my past into genuine strength. Kyle's humiliation had been sweet revenge, but now, moving beyond revenge felt even sweeter. I wasn't living in his shadow anymore, I was creating my own brilliant light. With my newfound position and freedom, I finally had the power to reshape my family's legacy. This time on my own terms. Success, I realized, wasn't just proving my worth to others. It meant something bigger, taking what I'd achieved and using it to make an impact beyond myself. I started small, investing quietly in local artists, the kind whose dreams reminded me of my own uncertain beginnings. I funded community art programs, supported mentorship initiatives, and gave artists the opportunities my family had denied me. Every time I handed over resources or simply offered genuine encouragement, I felt the echoes of my younger self breathing easier, seen and supported at last. Word spread quickly. Soon I became known not just as an artist but as a champion of emerging voices. Galleries sought my insight, community leaders valued my contributions. The painful years I'd spent overlooked by my family now translated into deep empathy and understanding for others who struggled silently. My story resonated with people, proving that dignity and strength could flourish from even the harshest rejection. Meanwhile, I transformed Dad's business empire into something more inclusive and genuine. My family's company, once known for exclusivity and arrogance, became respected for its fairness, transparency, and compassion. Employees found their voices heard clearly, creativity flourished, and morale soared. Dad quietly praised these changes, gradually accepting that this shift had been desperately needed for years. One day, a letter arrived unexpectedly from Kyle. At first, I hesitated to open it, wary of letting him disturb the peace I'd finally earned. Eventually, curiosity won out. His handwriting looked shaky, uncertain. "Tessa," he wrote simply, "I finally understand how deeply I hurt you. I don't expect forgiveness, but please know that losing your respect is my greatest regret. I'm genuinely proud of the woman you've become, everything I should have recognized sooner." Reading his words felt surreal. They didn't erase the pain, but they softened it slightly. The sincerity surprised me, but it didn't change the boundaries I'd firmly set. I'd moved past needing Kyle's approval. Still, knowing he'd finally felt even a fraction of what I'd endured was satisfying, not bitterly, but with quiet validation. That night, sitting with Natalie in my apartment, I shared Kyle's letter. She watched me closely, her voice gentle. "Does it feel better?" I took a deep breath, thoughtful. "It feels honest. Maybe that's enough for now." She smiled softly, understanding without pressing further. I leaned back, content in the space I'd carved for myself, authentic, powerful, and meaningful. I'd broken free from my family's toxic cycle, reclaimed my legacy, and turned it into something genuinely impactful. In that moment, I knew my future held infinite possibilities, not because I'd finally proven my worth to them, but because I'd found the courage to define success for myself. Kyle's remorse, my parents' respect, the community's support, all mattered less than the quiet satisfaction of knowing I'd chosen integrity over acceptance every time. My journey had never been about revenge alone. It was about reclaiming myself fully, unapologetically. Every brushstroke, every decision, every triumph had led me here. A life defined by purpose, passion, and the courage to create my own legacy. And nothing had ever felt so right. As the months passed, a sense of calm I'd never known settled deeply inside me. It wasn't flashy or dramatic, just quiet and powerful, a peace built on knowing exactly who I was and embracing every step that had brought me here. I no longer searched for validation from the people who'd spent so long dismissing me. I didn't need to. My worth was finally clear, and I owned it fully. Sitting in my studio one afternoon, surrounded by paintings, each canvas a vivid piece of my story, I felt overwhelming gratitude. Not for the painful years of being overlooked or the revenge I'd briefly savored, but gratitude for the strength I'd found, the genuine friendships I'd built, and the clarity that now guided my life. My phone buzzed gently. Natalie's text flashed across the screen. "Thinking about you today. So proud of you." I smiled, warmth spreading in my chest. Natalie represented everything right about my journey: honesty, loyalty, and unwavering support. She'd reminded me constantly that real family, true connections, were based on how people treated you, not on the blood that bound you. In this piece, I finally understood the truth of success. It wasn't recognition from people who once doubted me, nor was it revenge. Real success came from knowing I'd stayed true to myself, even through intense rejection and painful isolation. It was the quiet strength of having faced the worst, and still choosing kindness, authenticity, and integrity. Today I stand confidently, not because I've proven my family wrong, but because I've proven myself right. I've discovered the power of defining my own worth, choosing people who see me clearly, and using my experiences to empower others who feel unseen or undervalued. To those who feel invisible, I promise, your worth doesn't depend on anyone else's acknowledgement. Success isn't defined by how others see you. It's about being true to yourself, no matter who's watching. Your strength lies in your resilience, your truth, your courage to walk your own path. Have you ever felt invisible within your own family? Have you overcome rejection or fought to prove yourself? I'd love to hear your story. If my journey resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to know that it's okay, more than okay, to define success on their own terms. Because in the end, finding peace within yourself is the greatest victory of all.